Hello and good morning, Lancaster. We're halfway through week 4 and we're back with more news and more entertainment.
On today's show, we'll be talking about University Court, which was held on Saturday, and we'll be joined by Ronnie Rowlands and Lizzie Holton.
We've also been trying to figure out what all these 333 posters that are all around campus are all about. We found a clue we'll be showing you later on in the show. We also caught up with cross-campus officer for Women's Liberation as she was asking everyone which woman inspired her most.
So, as you can see, it's lovely weather outside, but if you're planning to go outside, not just yet. Stay tuned for more Good Morning Lancaster. And I am Justin Chow.
Now, in just a few moments' time, we'll be joined by Daniel Snape from Scan. But first, we've got to talk about this mysterious 333, haven't we?
I know.
I mean, here at LA1, we've noticed them. I think it's hard not to notice them.
They're everywhere, aren't they?
They really are all over campus. So we decided to go looking for answers and to find whoever or whatever we could find. Now, all we managed to get was this one video.
I'm in Lusu with Damon Furley, VP Union Development. Damon, do you know anything about these 333 posters that are scattered around campus at the moment?
No, I'm not too sure what's going on. I think it's really effective, whatever is happening with that and whoever's running that campaign. But I look forward to seeing what happens on Friday, because I understand they're doing something on Friday from 12 in the square.
That was definitely very interesting, wasn't it? I think he knows something, but he's not telling us.
He had a bit of a little smile,
Yeah,
didn't
he did, didn't he?
You
He
can't
was
tell whether,
or smug.
That, or he really doesn't know anything and he's just pretending.
Wow.
Either way, we're going to have to go Friday at 12, Alexandra Square, to find out what's happening. Daniel, does Scan have any information about this?
We don't officially. I have an inkling as to what it could be.
Yeah?
Because of the number 333.
Oh, what's that?
Okay.
And there's only one thing it can really be. What is the number 333 for? Where do we see it around campus? And it's the majority that Erica Lerenshaw has in the region. So it could have something to do with the election, but
So
I'm not sure
maybe
exactly
political ties.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Well, we'll discuss that later on, I think. And thank you for telling us your little clues. Now for this week's headlines. University Court has ruled that planned increases to rent and tuition fees at Lancaster should be reconsidered. The decision came after LUSU representative Joe O'Neill and Ronnie Rowlands put forward a motion condemning the increases as unrepresentative and unfair. Dozens of community leaders came together for the annual consultation on Saturday, including priests, teachers and trade unionists, and backed the motion with an overwhelming majority. Speaking for the proposal, O'Neill accused university management of holding the LUSU president hostage by treating the increases to campus rents and international tuition fees as confidential. But in its annual review, the university maintained that Lancaster is devoted to making higher education available to young people, whatever their social or economic background.
Also on Saturday, University Court heard a second motion asking for fundamental changes in the way college principals are chosen. The motion, proposed by VP Campaigns and Communications Ronnie Rowlands, pointed out that Boland and Lancaster have gone without a college principal since last year and demanded colleges be given the power to select their own principals. The motion was also voted through by a considerable majority. Criticising the proposal, Lancaster's provost for colleges, Amanda Chelwin, told the court that colleges continue to play an active part in the life of the university through projects such as the College Review, the finding of which are to be published in the coming days.
In related news, university management has started negotiations with students involved in the occupation of Lancaster of University House. LUSU reported that talks began yesterday over the university's increases to rent and tuition fees after roughly 30 students held part of the university headquarters for one day and one night as an act of protest last term. Toby Atkinson, a spokesperson for the occupiers, described the negotiations as promising despite the fact that the talks were first promised over 2 months ago. It's unclear whether the two parties have reached a compromise.
Figures show that the number of students applying to the university has reached a record high, with more disadvantaged students than ever vying for places in the UK. Applications to Lancaster University are even higher, up 18% on last year's figures. The figures released by UCAS on Thursday also revealed that there are 90,000 more women applying for higher education than men. Amongst the disadvantaged students, a woman is now 57% more likely to make a UCAS application than a man is. On a visit to King's University, former deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, Vince Cable, said the statistics prove that £9,000 tuition fees have not deterred students from applying.
Now, Lancaster University Homes, a new scheme targeted at student living off campus, is asking local landlords to promise a minimum standard of tenancy. Landlords who sign up to the scheme will receive recognition from the university and city council, but will be given a code of practice and may be subject to regular inspections. Hilary Simmons, head of colleges and student life, told the Lancaster Guardian that the university wants to make sure that students can find good properties and good landlords in Lancaster. The scheme launches online in October.
And finally, in fun news, on Sunday in the Express, this picture was released of a yellow Corsa in the middle of the Cotswold village called Bibbury. Robin Lawrence, 53, who lives locally, said, "That flipping yellow car." Mr. McCallum added, "Who owns the car? Why is he parking there? Does he know that his car is appearing in so many photos that are appearing all over the world?" Lee McCallum, 40, tweeted Bibbury's elephant in the room, the picture postcard street photobombed by the ugly yellow car. Every day.
That's a nice light end to the news, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely was.
Now, going back to something a bit more serious.
Yeah.
The University Court, what was the first motion?
So the first motion came from Joe O'Neill and Ronnie Rowlands, and Joe O'Neill, in the motion, he says he thinks that the increases to rent and international students' tuition fees are unrepresentative because there wasn't enough consultation with students and the Senate, and he thinks it's unfair as well. So what the motion urges court to do is to firstly reconsider the proposals and have all of the university decision-making boards who are related to this reconsider it. And secondly, it urges them to, again, force all the other councils related to this to reconsider the fee increases. And Joe O'Neill did say in his speech, secondly, that he thought, because every motion that's put to the court is basically a package of beliefs, thoughts, and actual solutions. And when Joe was giving his speech, he said he thought it was unfair of the university to make this information confidential when they gave it to the LUSU president, because it put her in a bit of a sticky situation as well.
Okay, so how did the court react to the motion?
Very favourably, actually. It was passed and voted through by an overwhelming majority, I'm told.
So what does that mean for the Students' Union?
It's hard to say, really, because court doesn't actually have any binding power, you see. So this isn't a decision that court's made and has to enforce on the university. It's just advice to the Senate and to University Council. And I have a feeling the university isn't going to do anything about tuition fees, firstly because the paperwork's already gone through, and secondly, because of the accounts that were published in court. And they show that the surplus of the university has decreased by £4 million. All of its other income sources, apart from tuition fees, have decreased. So funding council grants are down, investment and endowments are down. But tuition fees have increased significantly by, they've doubled since 2009, effectively. So the university is really relying on these increases to make up the numbers.
Okay.
And did anyone vote against the motion?
Yes, a handful of people. I'm told you could count the number on one hand. There were mostly senior management and at least one landlord who did speak against the motion.
And were the protests very conspicuous?
Yes, there were protests there. There were.
I mean, were they just outside the building?
They were just outside George Fox. Yeah, they had a couple of signs as per usual. I'm told there are only 6 of them, which doesn't sound like many. But in my opinion, that's probably an optimal number, because any more, and the people of court probably would have felt a bit threatened, maybe intimidated, and maybe even the protesters would have been tempted to occupy something again. Who knows?
True. Does this mean like the occupation talks are void?
It doesn't actually, because, as I say, the decision isn't binding, and the university doesn't seem likely to actually make any changes as a result of this. And it could be that because of this motion in court, the university has decided to actually start up negotiations again just now, 2 months after they first promised them. But it could be that the university is just going through the motions rather than actually considering
So it's
anything.
hard to tell at this point, isn't it?
It's very hard to tell, yes.
What was the second motion?
This came from Ronnie Rowlands, who seconded the first motion, and this was for a fundamental change in the way college principals are selected. He put the motion forward because Bowland and Lonsdale are without college principals right now. They've been without college principals since last year. And it seems that there's something fishy going on with Joe Thornbury's application. At least this is what's being claimed repeatedly in the subtext underground newspaper. So what the motion actually urges is for colleges, college syndicates, to be given the power to select their own principals rather than take nominations from a separate advisory board.
Okay, so was this as favourable as the first motion?
Just about, yes. Again, it was passed by a considerable majority.
It went down well.
Opposition in one hand, yes.
No, brilliant. And why hasn't the university found new principals? What is the system? How does it work?
Basically, there are two main bodies involved in picking a new principal. One of them is a selection committee, which nominates the people to the actual college syndicate. And so the college syndicate can only pick its new college based on the number of nominations it gets. What Ronnie Rowlands wants to do is to, and what the court has decided to advise the university to do, is to abolish this selection committee, because it seems last time it actually vetoed the application from Joe Thornbury, who was the incumbent principal of Bowling College and was eligible for another term.
Yeah. So does this sort of set a trend within the university that they can, like, the conflict at court? Because from what I've heard, you know, this is sort of a landslide sort of win for us, and it's sort of quite rare. Do you think this is going to be setting a trend?
I mean, it is being held as a big victory. Ordinarily, I'd say no, this isn't going to have any effect on the way court works, just because of the people who are involved in court. It's a public forum, it's full of priests, trades unionists, head teachers, people who won't come back to the university for another year and probably won't hear of any of these topics again. So they're not going to be that affected, in my opinion, by what's going on. But this time is slightly different, because the new Chancellor was presiding over court for the first time, Alan Milburn, and he would have got a very particular impression based on this. I mean, it's the first time a motion has been brought to court by the students in a long while, and we saw the VC described to me as something of a pantomime villain, a bit of a sore loser afterwards. And even before the motions, when he was walking into George Fox, he snubbed the protesters who were trying to give him leaflets. And it hasn't created a great impression. Alan Milburn didn't vote against the motions, and he actually congratulated Ronnie and Joe on it afterwards. So I think he's going to see his employers a slightly different way from now on.
That's all very interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Thank you for talking to us, Daniel. Now we're going to take a look at a new campaign going around campus, Lancaster Shouts Back.
Cross-campus officer Women's Liberation and cross-campus officer Ethnic Minorities went around campus asking what women inspire them.
I'm Caitlin and this is Omena, and we're both Liberation officers for LUSU, and today we're asking which woman inspires us.
I'd probably say Laura Clayson.
I'm inspired by Claire Jowett. She's an academic in literary and cultural studies.
I'm inspired by a woman called Emma Smith, and she lived in 1800s, and she was really powerful. She went through a lot, but she stood firm.
A woman that inspired me, I think, is Esther in the Bible, because of her courage and the strength that she has to stand up for what she knows is right.
Quite a do history. The only really one of the big women who inspired me was Florence Nightingale.
Yeah, I definitely will say my mom.
I'd have to say my nan, because she's gone through a lot and she's just remained like so strong.
Ever since I've been little, I've always been really inspired by Lois Lane from the Superman comics, because not only is she a kick-ass reporter, she's a Pulitzer Prize winner, she's a woman in what's traditionally been like a very male-dominated profession, and also she can go toe-to-toe with like the world's leading superpowers, supervillains, and like presidents and everything.
Emily Pankhurst, because she had the conviction to fight for what she believed in.
J.K. Rowling. Why? Because she isn't afraid to be opinionated, and regardless of whether that opinion
goes with social pressure or not.
Cheesy, I know, but definitely my mum.
Judith Butler,
Why?
because I find her theories interesting sociologically. She's a top lass.
My mom. And she inspires me because she's an extremely hard worker and she got far in her life and I want to go far in my life. So yeah.
For me, it's Josie Harrison. She's one of my friends and she's currently directing Vagina Monologues on campus, which I'm a part of, which is a great programme. So yeah, it would be Josie Harrison.
Chloe Hounsome, because she's a beautiful girl and she's very talented, many different ways.
My mum.
And why?
Because she's strong and she's taught me lots of stuff and she knows how to cook and she's been through a lot of stuff but she's got out the other end of it. It's admirable.
My mother inspires me quite a lot.
My mother, because she's really strong, she's really supportive, she's very dedicated to a lot of different things, and I wouldn't be where I am without her.
Apart from my mum, there's Mallory Blackman, because she wrote quite inspirational books at the time called Noughts and Crosses, about kind of race relations. There's Frida Kahlo, because she's an amazing artist, and she was also she defied boundaries with her art in terms of gender, politics, sexuality.
J.K. Rowling, not only because of her fabulous books, but also for her charity work as well. So that she does so much for writing and mental health as well with, I think it's Lumos.
That would be the female vocalist from Skillet, my favourite band.
At the moment it's my flatmate Leah, because she really wanted to go to New York after graduation, but none of her friends from home or something would go with her, so she just decided to go by herself, and she's planned it all out and she's just going for it.
Yeah, a woman who inspires me is Margaret Thatcher. I think she's a very strong woman. She had very good opinions, very strong opinions. She inspired a lot of people, not necessarily, she didn't necessarily do what was right or anything, but...
Probably Maya Angelou, because she went through racism and sexism throughout her entire life and she still came out on top.
Well, actually, it's just really interesting to see so many people saying their mums.
Oh, I think it's lovely.
That's
It's a nice
so
thing.
sweet, isn't it?
I did notice quite a few of them mentioned J.K. Rowling as well.
Well, she is a richer writer, after all.
True, true. Anyway, right now we're joined by LUSU VP Campaigns and Communications, Ronnie Rowland, and Faculty of Arts and Social Science representative, Lizzie Horton.
Hello.
So you were both at University Court
Mhm.
this weekend. Lizzie, can you tell me what happens there and just about Court?
Okay, so Court is sort of it's not a decision-making body, but it's a high meeting of the university, and it's a chance for the university to sort of show off to the local community what it's been doing that year. And it's also a chance for people within the local community, local sort of dignitaries, like Daniel said, heads of secondary schools, members of the clergy, all the bishops, lords and ladies, to come along, sort of get a bit of a catch-up on what the university is doing, and also a chance to ask questions. What's also quite useful is that quite a lot of old alumni sit on University Court as well, and obviously they've got quite a vested interest in seeing how things tick over, as does then all of the Students' Union Council. So this year we had about 60 students, about 60 students sitting on Court.
Interesting point. Just before Court started, the Pro-Chancellor Roger Liddell came over to me and said, "How many student members have you on the Court?" And I said, "About 61." And he goes, "Oh, you may well outvote us then." And then kind of
Which we did.
scurried
Yeah, so, and that wasn't just for students, but yeah, so it's quite a good sort of temperature gauge in some ways as well for what the university is up to, and as was the case in last week, the local community sort of said we're not quite fussed with what the university is up to. We're going to listen to the students.
Oh,
So it's quite a big body, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that happens once a year, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
So, Ronnie, would you say, out of all the councils and sort of everything we had at university, would you say University Court is the most powerful one?
Powerful, it depends how you define powerful. It certainly is not a decision-making body. They are not now obliged to, lower fees or return power of principalship selection to the colleges. However, they are an incredible kind of rhetorical device. Essentially, what you have, it's a great way to show how you can win a debate. You have free-minded people there. You don't have people sitting on council or senate who will just brown nose because it's good for their career. You have people with no real kind of career interests. So as a kind of gauge, as Lizzie said, of what people are thinking, court's great for sort of showing who's winning the debate. And I think in this instance we have.
And when you were going in, did you expect the outcome that you actually got?
Oh God, no.
No?
I thought, well, in the agenda, the university secretary appended background information, i.e. a rebuttal to each of the motion, which I believe was an attempt to prejudice the debate. And I thought, oh God, they're going to have people planted, and I bet the chair's in on it, and they're going to have all these rehearsed arguments, and we're going to be absolutely flattened. And it just was not forthcoming. I think they either had a strategy that was rubbish, because if that was their strategy, well, I wouldn't send them into Waterloo, let's put it that way. And I just think they overestimated it. They genuinely thought they could work court. Because in many other committees, the Vice-Chancellor could sit down and say, I think that we should raise fees because your mum. And everyone will go, oh yes, excellent point, Vice-Chancellor.
As we have just seen though, Ronnie, people's mums are very inspirational.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
They could literally say
A legitimate
anything.
and arguably a better argument than the one they put forward for raising international and postgrad
Yes.
fees.
Yeah, the gas bill's too high or whatever it was. And essentially, people saw right through it. So, you know, I was not expecting it and was very pleasantly surprised.
So it was quite a fair meeting then?
Oh,
a fair
yeah.
court?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, court's always quite congenial, so there's never necessarily a nasty atmosphere in it.
No.
But I think it was just quite pleasant actually to see that the Students' Union was putting the right argument forward. Because one, we have the backing of the student body, which we had at our Quarwick General meeting, which in itself was a very pleasant surprise. And then we've had the backing of the local population.
Okay, so given our sort of population at Lancaster University, a lot of PG students and international students, how badly is it going to affect them?
It's, I mean, I know some people will come up and say, well, it's only 5%, but actually the 5% is a cherry on top of quite a big cake of sort of burden which is put on postgrads and international students, which also links into sort of quite a lot of the issues that home and EU students face as well. I mean, I was pulling some numbers up yesterday, so if you want to do a master's, say, in accounting and finance, you'll already pay £15,000 for the pleasure of that. So 5% on top of 15,000 is an extra £750, which
is lunch for a term.
Yeah, it's that's certainly not to be sniffed at. And then you're adding that on top of, say, the fact that postgraduate teachers aren't paid particularly well, the fact that there's not the academic support for international students, and quite a lot of our postgrads are international students, so it's an issue which covers sort of both bases. So it's really just, it's a 5% increase, which, as we've seen, can be quite a big increase. But also there's nothing that people are getting for that 5%. It's not like 5%, but will improve English language provision.
Have they not said anything about
It's
improving?
simply, the only justification that has been given is to bring Lancaster in line with its competitors.
Whereas, as I said, we should not be brought in line with them, we should stand tall above them.
He did say that.
What was the reaction to that?
People
Round of applause.
Yeah.
Very well deserved round of applause.
Thank you, Justin. Hey, why were you even asking? You were there with me.
Yes, I was actually.
Well, I can
Undercover for LA1.
Didn't have to bother getting
For the sake of the
show.
show.
He's reporting for us.
Yeah.
Well, then in that case, I can ask all three of you, what was turnout like?
Well, it was good. Turnout was actually really good, yeah. A lot of students turned up, and there was a majority were students, actually, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, certainly we had a nice big block sort of at the front of George Fox Lecture Theatre, which was just students, and then one poor bloke from the Dukes who sort of wanders his way in and suddenly realised he was in the bolshy corner, I suppose you could call it.
But they were very noisy as well. I mean, when some of the more facile arguments came forward, there was a bit of mild heckling and grumbles of hear, and applause and whooping and what have you. It was a great atmosphere, and outside, of course, we had students with banners and flyers too, which it was very helpful, because sometimes it can look like, oh, it's just the union officers sort of having a little rodeo together, but to actually have people from outside of our circle of students showing up and protesting with us, and people in the court as well, outside and far removed from the student movement, voting in favour of these two motions, just goes to show that we seem to be winning the debate on this. And it would be very hard for the university to ignore this without looking incredibly closed-minded.
Well, I think it's great so many students got involved. Do you think this is the end? Is it, you know, can you see the end coming?
This is only the beginning.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, I mean, obviously we've got the occupation talks, as they've been nicknamed, coming up. And I think it's, I mean, unfortunately, it's sort of the whole issues of fee rises, rent rises, cost of living is something that's going to carry on for years, I'd imagine. But actually, I think we mark this down as a, like, well, we keep coming back to it, but the fact that we are on the right side.
I mean, presumably it's something that'll just come back and like keep coming back, as you said. But surely, that's the hard part kind of done.
A very promising first step.
Yes.
We'll see.
Baby steps.
It's a very good kind of ammunition to pull things out of.
Yeah.
But what about court? That's what you return to every single time.
Yeah. And the next step is then these talks, is it? These negotiations?
Yes. We had the first round of negotiations on Tuesday, which were more sort of introductory, really. We had to work out what we wanted. But come the next one, the onus is on the student union officers to actually bring discussion points and ideas. So we'll be compiling a list of feasible actions that the university can take to combat this problem. Whether or not they will agree to that is an entirely different matter, but, you know, we must throw punches even when we are out on our feet. It's a bitter end deal.
Well, Lizzie, Ronnie, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And that's about all we've got time for this week. But before we go, we'd like to remind you all of the Lucia Overseas drop-in sessions that are taking place today from 12 till 4 at County Bar.
The first heat of Battle of the Bands is tomorrow evening in Pendle, and Friday evening there's an open mic night in Fylde, so make sure to get down there.
And remember, if you have not registered to vote, please do so. Time is running out, and we want everyone on campus to have their say. So keep in mind that you're not obliged to vote by doing so, but it'll give you the chance, it'll give you the right to actually have your opinion and have your say on the 7th of May.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week for more Good Morning Lancaster. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.